Hello, how are you? Many people who are 50, 60 years old or older ask me, Patricia, what is the main vitamin we need to make sure we get in our daily diet as we get older? A lot of people worry about this, and today I brought you a list of the main vitamins we need to pay attention to in our daily intake. You're going to love this video. Stay until the end, you won't want to miss it. Before we start, I want to ask you how old you are and if you take any supplements in your daily routine, or if you make sure to get plenty of certain vitamins or minerals from food sources. I would love to see your comment. We know that as time goes by, older adults may start having more difficulty digesting and absorbing certain vitamins, nutrients, and even minerals, which can affect overall health and energy levels. So it's important for us to talk about which ones are the most important to focus on in our diet to make sure we're eating well. That's because as we get older, we can experience a decrease in the secretion of hydrochloric acid, the digestive acids. We can also have issues involving the intrinsic factor, which can impair nutrient absorption when it isn't sufficiently present in the body, in addition to changes in intestinal absorption itself and even reduced dietary variety over time. So it's important to make sure that the most essential vitamins are being consumed in forms and amounts that properly support the body's functioning. I think the first vitamin that comes to mind when we think about older age is B12. I even made a video talking about the symptoms of B12 deficiency in our body because it's a vitamin whose deficiency is very commonly associated with older people, especially since many people who take metformin have a B12 deficiency. And we know that metformin is a medication used to control diabetes, which many older people end up using. And B12 is essential for the production of blood cells, the health of the nervous system, maintaining cognitive function, the proper functioning of the brain. So when its levels are low in our body, we can experience fatigue, difficulty concentrating, memory loss, and even symptoms like tingling in the hands and feet. So it's important to consume good sources of it. The sources are usually easy for us to add to our daily routine. These include meats, beef, chicken, and so on, fish, eggs, milk, and dairy products. I mention this because many people who are strict vegetarians or vegans who don't consume animal-based foods and are older may have a B12 deficiency. In this case, it may be important to supplement. Another important nutrient is potassium. We know the important role it plays in the sodium-potassium pump, which allows us to excrete excess sodium and water from our bodies through urine. As a result, we can achieve improvements in blood pressure and cardiovascular health. In addition, potassium is related to muscle health and is also involved in the regulation of electrolytes in our body. So it's a very important nutrient for us to consume, and many people do not meet their daily potassium needs, especially older individuals. So good sources of potassium are bananas, avocados, beans, potatoes. So including these foods in your daily diet can be a good option. Another interesting option for many people is coconut water. Let me know if you consume any of these sources in your daily life. Of course, another extremely important nutrient is vitamin D, which is very important for bone health. When we think about vitamin D, we think about calcium absorption, bone health, muscle function, and the immune system. Vitamin D is a vitamin, but it actually plays an almost hormonal role in our bodies. It takes part in many functions, so it's even important for preserving muscle mass and balance, which are important as we age. Normally, we rely a lot on sunlight for vitamin D, right? We think like this: I live in a country with a lot of sunlight, I get sun, so I don't need to worry. But do you actually get sun exposure in your daily life? Because even people who live in the sunniest countries, so to speak, usually spend more time indoors, right? Or they put on sunscreen, wear hats, cover up, so they don't get that much sun on a daily basis. So sometimes just relying on the sun isn't really worth it. In these cases, remember that the natural sources of vitamin D are egg yolk, I even mentioned this in my videos, fatty deep sea fish, and also, of course, fortified foods. In that case, you really have to check the label. Another important nutrient as we get older is calcium, which is closely related, once again, along with vitamin D, to bone health. And we also know that over time, we can experience a decrease in the intestinal absorption of calcium, increasing the risk of osteoporosis and osteopenia, right? Which is the reduction of the amount of calcium in our body without having osteoporosis yet, but it's a sign that you might be heading toward osteoporosis. So it's important to assess bone density as we age, especially for women. Good sources of calcium are sardines, right? Once again, you see that they're also a source of vitamin D, and dairy products usually, as well as dark green vegetables. I have a really cool video here talking about the main non-dairy sources of calcium, and I'll leave it down below in the description for you. Another super important nutrient is magnesium, which is related to energy production, muscle function, sleep, reduction of anxiety, and even glucose control. Magnesium is involved in hundreds of metabolic reactions, and it's important that our levels are correct in the body. Otherwise, we can experience fatigue, cramps, difficulty sleeping, and even irritability. A great source of magnesium is pumpkin seeds, so if you're looking for something to add to your routine, they're a good option. But nuts, almonds, spinach, cocoa, and even beans and lentils are also good sources. Another super important nutrient is zinc. When we think about zinc, we think about immunity. Of course, we also think about wound healing, which is very important, especially as we get older, as well as protein synthesis and so on. As we age, we may have difficulty absorbing zinc, especially in the intestines. So it's important for us to ensure we get good sources of it. The sources are very easy for us to add: beef, seafood, eggs, seeds, nuts, legumes. But ideally, we should try to have a varied diet to be able to get all these nutrients in our daily lives. Another nutrient that is very important as we age is omega-3. We know that it can really help reduce low-grade chronic inflammation in our bodies, provide good support for cardiovascular health, and even improve our brain function, right? Our cognitive abilities, because it acts directly on all of these. And good sources of omega-3 can be fatty deep-sea fish, salmon, sardines, tuna, even canned mackerel. Now, if you don't eat fish, if you're a vegetarian, good options for omega-3 precursors are flaxseed and chia, for example. These seeds are wonderful. There are two nutrients that I also consider very important as we get older, actually at any age, right? But as we age, we become very concerned about the health of our eyes, right? With cataracts, macular degeneration, and decreased visual acuity. That's where lutein and zeaxanthin come in. These are carotenoids that are closely linked to eye health. We get them from foods that are more orange or red bell peppers, egg yolk, tomato, pumpkin, carrot, even dark green vegetables. Corn itself is a good source. So if you can add these foods, your eyes will thank you. Last but not least, focusing on protein is also extremely important as we get older. We have a greater tendency towards sarcopenia, the loss of muscle mass. Studies show that starting at 40 years old, we can lose about 1% of muscle mass each year. So ensuring a good intake of protein is essential. When we think of protein, we think of meat, chicken, fish, eggs, dairy products. But remember that legume vegetables are also great sources of protein. Beans, lentils, peas, chickpeas, these are all things we can add to our daily routine. Tell me in the comments below, which of these nutrients did you already make a point of including in your daily life? Which one are you going to start paying more attention to in your diet? I would love to see your comment. Remember to like the video, it really helps a lot, and share it with anyone who would enjoy it or needs it. Let's work together to spread this chain of kindness. That's what I want here on the channel. See you next time. Bye.